Welcome to Wizard Team, a Black Magical podcast for Black Magical stories.
Hi everyone, it's Bayana, Robyn, and Porshèa embarking on a journey through the many fantasy stories written by and about Black people. Today, we're kicking off our first mini-series where we'll be discussing Black Panther, Tales of Wakanda.
So I guess first off, just like going into why we chose this book to be the focus of our first mini-series. And why are we doing a mini-series? I guess is probably a good starting point as well.
Yeah. I can do, like, the why we're doing a mini-series part 2 is like, you ever have that existential dread of like there are too many books and there's not enough
All the time.
That's basically where this came from. There are too many books.
If you don't accept that fate,
we want to talk about them.
We spent like 2 years reading 2 books and we were like, this is not gonna work.
It is very, it's so funny how much that's naturally like part of each of our like identities, where it's just like for me, it's like I'm in like denial about like no, I can completely read every book on my TBR. Like you're not, I'm going to feed the delusion, and if we work through it with the podcast, even better. Like now we're just playing into my delusion, and I'm feeding off of this. It's giving me energy to know that like slowly maybe I can read everything on my TBR.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the problem is we also we keep a list of books that we want to cover, and it's like, how many pages is that document? It's like very long.
It's also sad because like this book in particular wasn't even something that was like on our backlog of TBR.
I know.
We
added it. We were like, this is what we'll start
This
with.
list is 8 pages long. This list is 8 pages long of books that we want to cover. Granted, there are the way it's broken down also into like
categories
where like how we want to cover them. So some of it is like duplicated. There's like a long list of what we want to cover and then organizing it. Still, it's a very long document and inevitably is only going to grow longer. And so we're trying to get creative about
everyone's
how
so
we
creative.
cover all these books.
Everyone's so creative. I also think that like in trying to get creative about like how we cover or the amount of books we can cover, we also have to try to get creative about like formatting, right? So we even went from the reason why we did Amari and the Great Game the way that we did as opposed to Amari and the Night Brothers was because we were like, there's too many books. We cannot spend, and like granted, like we switched from Amari to Legendborn, and Legendborn was like, there's no way we can do, if we do this one chapter at a time, we'll be here until retirement age. And so then we were like, that worked out pretty well, 3 chapters at a time or breaking it up. So like, let's figure out how to do that again. And in the like, there's too many books that we want to cover. We kind of were like, well, how are we going to do these? Like shorter, one-off, or like, let's get these books done. And so I think the reason why this one jumped up in the pecking order is because like the anthology is actually pretty not easy, but it's like it's clear how we can read and like deep dive into it in the podcast format. We still have to figure it out. And also with like other books,
not as many episodes, which we could right. Like it is because it's an anthology. There is a like we could definitely approach it as like one thing per
story per episode, which we talked about, yeah,
which we're not doing, but you know, there are books that we can do in a lot. We can pretty much approach any of these books in different formats. But that's also, you know, how our author interviews and bonus episodes came about. We just want to we want to highlight a lot of books, and there are a lot of them. So we want to just make sure we're covering as many as we can in the ways that we can. And yeah. But like Robyn said, this one wasn't even initially on our list. And then it That's how a TBR works. You're like, oh, I want to get to all these books, and then another one is a sneak. It just is like, hey, but what about me? And then
It whispers
that's
in
what
your
it
That's why
ear,
you
and
is.
you're
So
like, "Am I hark? Is that a new book I
Hark
hear?"
the Herald Books thing. That's why you don't keep a TBR. You become a mood reader and you just like go with the
No,
flow.
you can keep a TBR and be a mood reader. You just have to you just
Yeah.
take your book off
you
of
got to keep
the
your TBR so
TBR
you know
as
which
a
books they.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, my
'Cause
TBR is like
otherwise, how do you keep track?
my
exactly.
TBR is basically a like, I heard about this book. Write it down so I can,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm looking for the next book, it might pop into my head.
You'll know.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, that's how we chose Tales of Wakanda. I personally, so I just like was thinking about this as we chose this book, but also as I've realized like I've really fallen off on like all Marvel slash not, and it's not Marvel. It's basically like
Same.
I don't watch TV,
Television.
television, or and I don't watch
Me-
movies. Like if it's not basketball, I don't really do it. I was talking to uh acquaintance of mine who is like he's very into like grew up reading the comics and all this stuff, and kind of explaining how like I would consider myself a huge Marvel fan centered in the MCU as opposed to centered in the comics. But I do know, just because of who I am as a person too, of like deep dives and like one-off reading and trying to like, I have read comics and stuff, but I have never like kind of like followed along. I can't say that I've like read a run start to finish besides like Miss Marvel. And even then, I know I'm not up to date with what has been coming out
Oh, no.
now. Yeah. And I think that like the thing I liked about doing Tales of Wakanda is that, you get the list of like authors who have like contributed to this anthology, and that's really exciting. Like the authors that you know and you recognize, like Nikki Giovanni's name is on there, and you're like, how? What? Let's do it. Tanner do like, there are like names that like jump out at you, but then it's also less kind of daunting than, I don't know if y'all remember this, but um you probably don't. At some point, there was like a sale, like a digital sale on like either Comixology, which was owned by Amazon,
Oh,
or
yep.
Marvel. I
I
think it was
remember
like
that. It was
when,
free.
yeah, it was like around the time the first Black Panther's coming out. And so like
Like 2018, yeah.
I have
I have
like
all of them. Yeah.
all of them. I was like, they put the whole,
Yeah.
like they put like
Same.
every Black Panther that you could think of, the digital for free.
It was for free.
I have so many of them. And I was
Mm-hmm.
just collecting them. I don't think I've read a large chunk of them, but I own them.
What I realized was when I finally started like using Kindle, um, I went on there and they were all on there because it was through Comixology,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
It integrates to
Amazon.
Kindle, yeah.
So when I went on there, I was like, oh yeah, like it reminded me that I had just done that on a whim and then never actually went to read it, which now like I should do that. Now that you've reminded
Yeah,
me
so I
again,
was like, because I was like, when I was buying this book, and I bought it in every format again. And I'm imploring publishers to have a neurodivergent pack where I could have like a deal to get it in every single format. Because who knows what format I will be actually reading it in. But
Mhm.
so like my relationship and entry point with like Black Panther and the World of Wakanda is early. It's like through one of those I'm gonna get into comic book type of things. And so I've read some comics, some like graphic novels with him, but I don't have that deep knowledge about it. And then my like, and I think too, like just in general, Black Panther's like in the cultural zeitgeist. Like even if you've never read them, like you knew the superhero and the name before they said the movie was coming out. I feel like people like, it wasn't like the first time you've heard the term Black Panther, right? And so thinking about like that, I'm Spider-Man trash, and then in the MCU, I'm Odin family trash. Like, you know, I don't care what y'all got to say about Thor. That's my boy. So I was obviously like excited for Black Panther in 2018, and excited for like a Black superhero movie. And I knew Black Panther, but like I just kind of knew the highlights, right? Like Wakanda is a place that was never colonized. At some point, he marries Storm from the X-Men, and they're super rich. They got vibranium, and he's very smart. And then Shuri, the sister, and like I don't even know like how well I understood Shuri before that, but like the most I got into Black Panther was really like that 2018 like sell, and I got a lot more editions than I've actually read, but like that, and then just kind of osmosis, like cultural osmosis. So in terms of my like relationship and entry point to Black Panther, my relationship was like established with the Ryan Coogler movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then my entry point was just like I couldn't pinpoint to you what you know, which cultural osmosis basically. So what about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, so I am sort of similar. My dad was always like a comic nerd. And so Black Panther was definitely one of the comics that he read, you know, growing up and stuff. And so he bought my brother a lot of comic books, and Black Panther was one of them. And I kind of just, my brother and I growing up, we used to just like trade books and like share them. So they might be bought for one of us, but then at some point we'd like switch. So I definitely like read. I see, the thing is I don't remember like all of them. I didn't read them all for sure, but I specifically remember because like I read pretty much all of the Civil War run.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ask me about it because I was like 11, so I don't, or maybe 14. I don't remember exactly when it came out, but I was too young. I have not read it since. But I read almost all of that saga because my dad was buying them for my brother, and so the Black Panther Storm wedding is like within that, I'm pretty sure. So I read it all around the same. I read it all around the same time. Yeah, I would say I was maybe like a freshman in high school thinking about it. So that was pretty much like it. And I've like always kind of been like on the peripheral again because my brother was reading those like reading the comics, and then I became more into it with the MCU, which even that took me a little bit of time. But by the time like Black Panther was coming out, I was all the way in it. So it was just like, you know, when Civil War dropped, I was like, oh, this is about to be everything. And it was like so great, that like introduction to T'Challa. But yeah, so like I've kind of like dabbled in comics at very specific moments where I'll be like in it, and then I won't be for for years. The last time I was in a comic little bubble, I guess, was like maybe 6 or 7 years ago at this point, when I was living in Chicago, and I had two different coworkers. One of them lent me, I don't think it was all of Ta-Nehisi Coates' like first like run of Black Panther. I don't think it was the whole thing, but it was like a good chunk of it that I read that they let me borrow. And then one of my other coworkers lent me like Daredevil, which I don't remember which run that was. Like again, it's been a minute now. Cause I'm just like, I will read, like, if you give me a comic book, like, I will read it. Like, if you give me, you know what I mean? Or you give me recommendations, like, I'm probably more likely to get to them eventually now, because that's kind of all, like Robyn was saying, like, I don't really watch any TV at this point. I'm very behind on the MCU. Well, I'm more behind on the TV shows than I am the movies. I think I'm caught up on the movies, except like maybe one. But yeah, so I'm just kind of like, my entry point was definitely when I was like younger and reading my brother's comic books. But definitely I would say the movie too is when I was like, okay, like I you know, could go hard for Wakanda. I'm also from Oakland, and we took
Wakanda.
Killmonger being from Oakland, we took that personally. Ryan Coogler's from the town. We took that personally. So I can't really go anywhere without like that
Yeah.
being mentioned or being like, some kind of iconography or imagery,
The way that
in my
I
general
went
life.
like crazy trying to get that Black Panther Oakland cover from I forget which Free Comic Book Day release, but I was like, listen, there's only like 8 comic book places. How many am I gonna call?
To see if
it was like for one specific place. And the line was like, they were like, girl, good luck. I said, y'all don't play with me.
Yeah. So, my only regret is that I did not see Black Panther in Oakland like the first time.
But you saw it with family.
I saw it in San Diego, and then we saw it with family, which was great. No. It's not that, but then I saw it. I was living in Chicago, so I saw it with family in San Diego, and then I went back to Chicago and I saw it like 10 more times. But I was like, not in Oakland, and I would have been nice to get that like energy. I saw Wakanda Forever in Oakland, and it was like, it was great, but I think the energy, I feel like with the first movie, it would have been more organic because folks were not, obviously, we know Ryan Coogler, and he's, again, from the town, but like, I think it probably would have been a little more organic and just in the surprise of that, you know what I mean? Versus it being like at this point, again, Wakanda, like that's a thing. Folks know that, you know what I mean? Like they're coming with some preparation, I guess is the word. But yeah, I think I answered the question. I don't remember. What about you, Porshèa?
So similarly to you, like to y'all, like I am not generally a comic person, like, but like I mean, like I like Robyn is definitely more comic oriented than like I am. But if I get something, like I'm gonna take it. So that comicsology thing, like I did get a batch of that. I think I might have picked something up, like and actually like looked, like read it. I don't remember what it was, because something is in my brain telling me that like I read a Shuri story, and I can't think of where I would have read it outside of picking up one of those comics. Black Panther in general, I'm just gonna keep it real with you on like the what I've heard about Black Panther and like the comic stories that like I have picked up of Black Panther. Something about the writing of the relationship, in particular between like the Black Panther and the Dora Milaje, like bothers me. Like the like beloved crap like that.
Well,
like that bothers me.
The way that it was
Yeah,
created was
very
not
sus.
all
Yeah.
that.
So like
It's
so
not
like
great.
I definitely like have not had an impulse where like Black Panther was gonna be like a superhero that I was like gonna like gel with like that, because like I do like the X-Men from like when I was younger. That was the one comic book that I like outside of Archie that I definitely had when I was younger. So like I've never really had a compulsion to like pick up Black Panther until the movie came out. And then when the movie came out, it was around the same time. I think I want to say like um when volunteering with the fandom forward at that time, there was they had a booth at the American Library Association conference in Chicago, and as part of like the free books they were giving out there, I got the middle grade like Black Panther book, The Young Prince by Ronald Smith. And so I picked that up, and I had it in my like my haul of like my suitcase sized haul of of books I got for free that at that event. And I don't think I actually picked it up until like a year or so later. And so that was like, I think I read it like right ahead of the movie. And I don't think it was like it was not at all a tie into like T'Challa's life as it was on screen, but it did give me like a kind of good basis for like understanding a little bit of the world ahead of like seeing the movie. So that was kind of like how I built that kind of relationship. And then like actually like the phenomenon of the movie, and like how like everybody Black was like really just rooting for it to do well and like supporting it and like being part of that wave, and like everybody walking around doing Wakanda forever was just like a thing. And so that was really like fun to see like pop culture being used that way to like support Blackness and like being like Black together. um that was kind of like mostly like what the vibes I got from it. And then And I enjoyed like Nakia's like story, like her as a person. Like I was like, okay, I'm interested in what she does. Okoye, I was like, okay, like I also with like how she reacts to stuff. So if the actual comics are related to like the characters have similar like characterizations, I'm down. Also Shuri. And I never really cared about Black Panther. Like I never really cared about T'Challa. Like not that I dislike him actively, is or any like we'll get into it with the anthologies for the other Black Panthers. They're just never compelling characters to me. Like as a lead, it's like a lead character syndrome. Like I never really care about the lead character for most stuff, and like for Black Panther, that's all consistent as well. But the funny side point to like all the my relationship to the Black Panther is that like indirectly the Black Panther movie is responsible for me having my current job because I was invited to my job's event they had around Black Panther. And I did not know about this organization until I went to the event. And then I was like, oh, okay, what is this place? And they do cool stuff like this and they arrange talks about Black Panther. Like, let me find out. And that's how I got into it. So I have like a very indirect like life of stuff happen around Black Panther, but it's also like it's very it's not at all like the direct relation, but it does feel kind of interrelated in a way.
Yeah. That just sort of reminded me of when we did that like Black Panther review on Wizard Team. Like was that like when the movie first came out, and that's back when we were reading Harry Potter and they had nothing to do with
We
each
were
other.
like, listen.
But I don't remember why we
Like,
needed
read.
I don't remember why we it was like, oh, it was Black Magical History Month because the movie dropped in February.
Mhm.
And we wanted to do like February related bonus episode. So it's on there. It's still like, because it was a Harry Potter podcast, we did have like, I think we do some sorting or something, but it was fun.
We never have
But
a
yeah,
we
no,
never have
that's
reason to be
like that.
Black and be like talking about Black film. Like we can do anytime.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah,
need
I was
to.
just like, why not? Let's just we had to make it work, but also it was, yeah, that was fun. Okay, so coming into this anthology, there's obviously like there's like 18 stories. Um Obviously, you know, a lot of different authors, a lot of different people writing. And so which authors, or were there any authors that you were excited to read, or were you just kind of like, you know, just gonna read the book and let's see, you know, what
So
we
we
like.
recently read an author, and you'll see it soon. And we talked to them, and when I found out that they had a story in the book, I was like, okay, I'm excited to read that story just because of the like personal, I guess, connection. And just after reading some of his other work, just like, oh, I'm interested to see what he does in like the world of Wakanda. When we looked at it, and it was like I said, like Nikki Giovanni's name is on there. I'm like, yes, excited for that. And then there wasn't anyone else that like really stood out. I mean, there's some like recognizable, I guess, names that like, you know, you see that name and you are interested to see what they do. Tananarive Due being one of those, kind of like just interested in.
Yeah. I was really curious about hers because I like her like writing a lot, but she definitely leans like horror. And like horror fantasy. And it's like, I mean, I read her I don't remember what they're like, if it has an actual title, but like African Immortals series. And like it starts off horror, and then like I think it's not really scary, but it's definitely like a horror, I guess. But I've read one of her other books in college. I think it's called The Between, and that freaked me out. I was like, no thanks. So I was definitely like curious what she was gonna do with this one. Which it's not scary, so that's kind of a relief. um, um, and then also Sheree Thomas is one of the what's the word, like editors for the Africa Risen anthology that I really liked. So I was also like interested in like her story as well. I feel like those are the main two that you haven't mentioned, Robyn, that I was like, you know, see what they're gonna do.
Yeah, I'm over here trying to confirm because I don't want to be that girl. But I believe like it's so funny how like authors have different like names they use for different like genres and or age categories. But I believe that Sheree Renee Thomas also some places more than others, which is like middle grade book about a Black girl who I believe she's like from the South or something like that, and then she ends up moving to like Washington State, and it just like it was a really cool story, um, and I really enjoyed it, and I was like, okay, like I would love to see her write again, and then I picked up recently she had a poetry book come out, um, Black Girl You Are Atlas, and that was also really good. So I was excited to see like what her perspective would look like in a Marvel story. Um, and then all the authors that y'all named were on my list. I had like read Caldwell Turner, when is it? Turnbull before, but I didn't really care about the story. Like it was the story that I read from him wasn't like a story that like lingered in my brain. But I did not hate his writing style, so I was pleasantly surprised to see like what he did with the story in here. It wasn't like a fave, but it was decent. Um Timmy O, I had just read she has a book that is like a YA Black Mirror basically kind of, it feels very Black Mirror. Um, and more perfect. And I was wondering if like that would be an element of the story that we would get in this book as well. Um, and the only other person, like, so he, please, I'm like, hopefully this will not stir up any trouble. But there's an author. I just want to say the author's name. There's an author whose stories I've read, and I like the premise of these stories have been like set up in a way that I'm like, oh, I might gel with that. But then when I actually read them, I kind of hate them. And then in this anthology, they wrote a story, and I was like, like I had a little bit of trepidation about like was I gonna actually like it or not. But I didn't really care. I just kept reading stories as they came up. And I was really surprised how much I liked it. I'm like, maybe this is it. Maybe they just need to only write short stories. Like maybe we need to just like maybe this is the thing you need to do, baby, because it really did come together for me in the anthology in a way that their other writing, like for full novels, just really hasn't pulled together for me.
Yeah. I did have a I don't know if it was a Stuff Your Kindle or if it was a Robyn is awake way too late / early in the day and bought a book on Kindle and have no idea why or what. Like, you know, you wake up and it's like a fever dream, and then you look at your like bookshelf and you're like, oh, I did buy that thing. So the Kyoko M has a book called The Black Parade. And I don't know if I bought it thinking I was buying a My Chemical Romance thing. I woke up and it's in my Kindle library.
Like, do you need to have a reason? Like, do you need to remember your reasoning at 4:00 in the morning?
At some point, it was a good idea, and then I saw their name in the list of authors, and I was like, "Why does that name seem familiar?" And it wasn't until like after I started, after I got the book and I started reading the anthology and stuff, I was like, "That name is familiar." And I went back to look, and I was like, "Oh, I bought your book. I haven't read it yet because I also don't know anything about it, and I don't know why it. I have it though, so I am also excited because I'm like, I liked it. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna go read this book that I already own. So,
but that's another way to clear it. TBR is read a short story from an author and then figure out if you're gonna go read a longer one.
And you're like, oh, okay, let me get to that's true.
So
But that's
Um,
hilarious.
yeah, sometimes your brain be doing one thing and your consciousness is somewhere else,
The
but
impulse.
sure.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I don't typically read anthologies or short stories, so I was also trying to be um kind of mindful of that just because of I think my ADHD and like the switching also we didn't really talk about this, but like by the time I got it together to get this book before recording, like we said, we like decided on this book. It was all very like hurry up, go, stop, wait, go. Um, that like I found that as I'm like partially reading it with like the panic of like I have to sit down and start recording this soon, so I need to know what I'm talking about. Um, that helped me kind of push through, but I wish I would have like, and I will probably try to have like a little bit of space and then like go back and read them kind of a little bit less um hurriedly. But I
Panicked.
do find, yeah, like a lot less panic reading, but I do find the setup of anthologies to be, like not all anthologies, but like in general, like short story anthologies in which it's like a similar theme, but there's not like a, I don't know, it's very difficult for my brain to like context switch that quickly. So I do like to
Mm.
have a little bit of space. And so that's one thing that I was like kind of interested in as well. Especially talking to you guys, and I think that you've read more of these than I have, or this like format than I have, but I found that to be a little bit like interesting and also difficult to kind of parse out. Is this something about the author? Or am I just like having a hard time kind of like context switching from the last story? And so it feels just, obviously it's disjointed. It's a completely different author. It's a completely different story,
Mhm.
setting, time period, everything, So that was also kind of interesting to me. And I was excited to see how it read to me, but I also found that it was like more difficult than I expected.
It's funny that you say that.
Yeah, I
Okay, say
usually
your point, but
oh,
yeah,
go
say your
ahead.
point 'cause I have a transitional thought.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, for me, that I usually when I'm reading short stories or like anthologies, I usually do like one a day. Like I try to do just if I have time. Like this time I was kind of going like 2 or 3 in a day or whatever, but like when I'm reading them like on my own and just to read, I usually kind of split them up because of that. And like it's not too difficult, but I think like partially, it's just yeah, to give it some a little bit of space to breathe, and to kinda know how I feel about it before I go, like, directly into another one. So I definitely feel you on that because it can be, like, just the switch up. So, they're like chapter length, maybe a little bit longer than that, but just that can definitely be a little jarring, especially if the tones are very different. Um, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that like Robin was talking about the way that like yeah, the transitions from the stories were like a little like odd. It's like an anthology kind of thing. You understood the setup, but it was also like it was just different. So not like in like the jarring a little bit. I think for me, like on the it was interesting because I did not expect for this anthology, like for a lot of anthologies that I've read in the past, um, they tend to have like maybe there's a theme for the entire book. However, they don't all have to like even make any sense to each other. They can be so like diametrically like opposed to each other because like they'll have fresh characters and they won't even be in the same world. It'll be it's just like they just have a prompt like of like concept like Africa Risen has like Africa Risen like that could be futuristic, that could be that could be in the past, it could be both or whatever. Like it could really do a lot. Um, so I think that's what I'm used to with it with anthologies, and I expected something similar for this. Except for that it would just be like tales from all over like Wakanda. And then I was like, it was really strangely satisfying because I saw an alignment in world building. Like I saw that
Mhm.
like the way that the stories were curated, like in the order that they were curated in, like actually like helped you build up more and more knowledge about the like world of Wakanda, and like gave me like questions about like how does a heart-shaped herb actually like mean to the culture of who has access to it. Like I thought it was only one person and they only used it one time, but there are people using it for multiple purposes. Like what's happening there? And then there was stuff about like what did I have? So sidebar, I have this handy dandy like reading journal, and it's like so cute and very fancy. And I was like, I don't know when I'm going to use it. And then we started doing this whole mini episode and like author interview approach, and I was like, this is perfect. I'll just use it for that. So I put ask you questions like, what did you like the most and your favorite characters and stuff. So I'm like, okay, this is perfect. So I think I'm looking at my notes for like my thought about the other thing that was interesting to me about, oh, and the role that like Wakanda plays um in the world, but like specifically in the like them being not basically them being very like superiority complex. Like they're like, we control what people
Mm.
should have access to, should have access to. So they imply or slash outright say, and I'm sorry, Robyn, this is a spoiler, but that the Library of Alexandria, like the burning of it, is like something that the Wakandans like orchestrated. Because yeah,
Mhm.
so there's things that are built out in like throughout the book that you're like, wait a minute now.
Yeah.
Like if this is official canon,
Yeah.
especially like this, there's a lot of like growing knowledge of like, oh, so like, and that's another reason why I'm not gonna like any of the people who fill the seat of Black Panther, because I'm never gonna like someone who's going to be like withholding information from the people because they think it's in their best interest to keep information from the people. Um, so it was
Mhm.
really cool seeing how like each story keeps adding to that or adds to something different in a different way. And you're like, wait a minute. Wait, what's okay?
Yeah. And it's like it's interesting too in this like that's I agree. I think like thematically they all kind of touch on like some of them will have specific like focuses, but they'll still touch on like that theme of like what is Wakanda's relationship and what is their responsibility to like both their people and to the rest of the world. And it's one of those things where like it is just as in the movies or I'm assuming in the comics and stuff as well, just like it is complicated. Like there are moments where it's very clear that like, yeah, Wakanda is not necessarily right for the way that they're handling this. And then other situations where it's like, oh, but I do kind of get why you're not really trying to like be seen and be known and all of those things, right? And it's also interesting because the um different stories like hit different um moments in time, right? We get those like we get other Black Panthers and we get them when Wakanda is shut down, right? You get them like 200 years ago and nobody knows about them, right? And then you also get like T'Challa's era where he's, you know, Wakanda's been opened up and now he's having to deal with like those kinds of threats. Um and still coming back to that theme within all the different time periods and different like circumstances of different, you know, main characters and that kind of thing. I really appreciated like how they had that like through line.
It's one of the things that
And still it's
oh,
like oh, I was just gonna say, and still it's still leaves it out of the question. It's not like the question is answered necessarily.
it's one of the things that I notice and I do enjoy a lot about like the actual Black Panther comics that I've read, which is like whenever it's kind of set in Wakanda, you do get the sense of like, you know, because like he has his own issues, you know, like he's got the his his step adopted brother Hunter, who is the White Wolf, and M'Baku and the Jabari tribe, and like these like internal like domestic issues that come with running a country and being a hero and things like that. And it's easy to get kind of like sucked into those stories when you're reading them, and they're like set and like they're centered in Wakanda, and then whenever he does go outside, the Black Panther go, goes outside into the wider world, it feels like inevitable that those questions are going to come up and be um, kind of top of mind, and there isn't really, like you said, like it's complicated, and there's not like a right or wrong answer. And I think like one of the things that I was excited about with the different writers too is that like I feel like from a Black American perspective, um, the the Killmonger of at least of the MCU, that kind of, you left the rest of the diaspora to like kind of suffer, makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of top of mind because that is really tied closely to like our cultural identity, especially as Black Americans, and what like Black Americans went through, and like the idea of like not only there being a country that wasn't colonized, but that also has resources, which I think, I don't know, it feels like it's all like it feels like a very clear like you are wrong in the Chadwick Boseman like little hop on the ancestral plane, but it's a dynamic that I think is like just ripe for different perspectives and different lenses and takes of it. And so I've always really enjoyed that about Black Panther, but then I also did, especially within this anthology, and then also like some of the, you know, just like straight comics that I've read, I also do enjoy when you just get back to like them just being in Wakanda and that like domestic, because you do understand how something that a policy of like isolationism made sense, and then can then continue to just continue because that's the way it's been, and then how breaking that down can be difficult. So I don't know. I just think that that's like one of my favorite things about like Black Panther as like a title and as a storytelling device, I guess, too, is how many authors and writers like come at that and come at it and come to different conclusions or different points of view about it.
Thanks for listening to this bonus episode of Wizard Team. Stay tuned in May as we start a mini-series where we discuss Black Panther Tales of Wakanda. This is going to be a special new bonus option that we're offering to listeners, as well as our special Patreon offer where you can join during the month of May for free as a BNC baddie. BNC baddie benefits include being able to join us for bonus recording episodes and regular recording episodes during the month of May for Wizard Team, as well as access to our baddie chat within our Discord community. Be sure to join us through signing up through Patreon through May only for free. We're hoping this will have you join us for future episodes and bonus episode and regular recordings of Wizard Team. Also, the behind the scenes access that you can only get as a BNC baddie on Patreon.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
I guess we should get into world building a little deeper. Although we're kind of already here.
Are we spoiling or not spoiling? Because that's how I'm like, look.
You can spoil?
I think we spoil.
I don't want to spoil too hard.
To an extent, we don't have to like tell full on stories or whatever. But yeah.
For me, so I want to talk a little bit about the curation too, because I feel like I'm gonna give, because whenever we get into, I don't know if we're gonna get, I'm gonna put it here just in case. I I think that for the way that the stories were curated, it seemed like the stories that were in the front of the book were the ones that were more uh exposition heavy and put a lot of
Mm.
like just in case it's been a while since you've reached into Wakanda, these are some things you should know. Uh T'Challa, the Prince of Wakanda, like walks into the it was like a very exposition heavy, especially the first story. So it like there was like a level of like I when I first picked up the book and those are the first couple stories I'm getting have a decent amount of exposition in them. I worried about like, oh crap, is this whole book gonna be um doing too much to establish why this story is in this world, because each person is submitting a short story trying to explain like what's happening in the story as well as why the story has to happen in this world right now. When you get to Tananari's story, that's where it kind of like for me it was less exposition heavy and more just like this story. I'm not gonna have to explain myself. You know who Storm is, and she's that girl. And then that was amazing. That was awesome for me. And um I think that like it's and I say that to you like because I am caught up on like the Marvel watching. I will say that if you love the scene of Storm storming into the battleground of the first episode of X-Men 97, then you're gonna love Tananarive story. Like it's similar vibes, amazing. And if you haven't seen that episode, just look up on YouTube the clip of Storm. I'll pull the clip up and put it in our links or something. It is amazing. Like they really devoted the time and energy to animate her taking over with the elements and like being the best. And she brings that same energy to the story. And then also she has like Queen Ramonda and Shuri on her side, and it's just like a funny like wing woman kind of
Yeah.
experience. And it's just it's a good story overall. It's very entertaining. And like before that, there were other stories that were entertaining, and they get to those pieces that I was talking about before about the heart-shaped herb, and like I did not realize that like maybe this is it canon, is it not canon, of how like the heart-shaped herb was used in multiple items like that were split like mostly for T'Challa's
Mhm.
use, but then like the stories that I liked the least were the ones where it was like it doesn't make any sense in the worlds you've already built out for this to happen this way. So I think it was like the one where the guy is a spy in DC, but then basically they give him all the powers of the Black Panther kind of without actually saying
Oh yeah, White Tiger.
the underside of darkness. Was that the
No,
one?
Mm.
it was White Tiger. What is his
No, that's what I'm saying.
what do
But
they
the
call him
story
though?
was the story. No, the story was What's Done in the Dark.
Yeah.
What's Done in the Dark was the story.
Yes.
I didn't. It bugs me because I'm like that doesn't make any sense. So some of like story wise and like world building wise, that was like something that took me out tonally because I
But I
didn't
think
get it,
that's comic book canon
and
though.
it's weird.
I don't disagree, but yeah. Yeah.
Like comics can be weird. I know
Uh
that, but that like story it just
yeah, I mean
took
there's
me out.
plenty of
It
like
really took me out.
yeah, I feel like yeah, I guess I do. I think one of the things about this though is because I'm not it was interesting to like see what folks picked from in terms of like which characters to focus on or to bring into their stories, and like in some ways it was like, oh okay, this is like not that I could 100% tell when it was a canon established character or like an original character, but there were like a few where it was like, oh okay, I just didn't know about them, you know what I mean? And so that kind I liked it in the sense of giving new entry points into Kevin Cole, that was his name. But yeah, giving more entry points into like the Marvel universe. Um One thing I also really liked was that we got to see Bast.
Yeah,
Like
that was
that
a good
was one of my
story.
favorite
Yeah.
things
Like the
actually,
origin
and
story. Yeah.
um in multiple stories, and in some ways she always kind of seemed like the characterization seemed pretty
Consistent.
consistent. Though, you know, we see her in different like time periods, so you can also kind of some of the differences you could kind of like attribute to the fact that like time has passed, or like she has different relationships with different
Panthers.
Black Panthers. So like there's one where she's always constantly in that particular Black Panther's mind. Whereas like T'Challa, he only talks to her on occasion, you know, he got to go looking for her basically. So yeah, that part was really like cool, I think, as like a world building point and as something to like build out across different stories, especially because we are getting different Black Panthers. Because I even think we see, yeah, because there's even like
That's what I was gonna
Bashenga
say. I was
too. So it's just
the
like,
origin of this, like,
yeah.
the Basinga story, I was like, that is for me, that was, like, it was interesting because it was pre, like, the, like, establishment of, like, what seems like actual, like, village like, land mapped Commonwealth areas within Wakanda. So,
Mhm.
like, that story, it felt kind of like, and I don't know, for the thing that came to mind as, like, a similarity was, like, the Avatar: The Last Airbender, when you see the episode of, like, the first Airbender or whatever, like, that's what it
Mm,
gave me the
mhm.
vibes of, like, seeing Bashinga, like, you're like, I didn't know, like, he didn't know what his relevance was gonna be later, like, what his legacy is gonna be, but, like, this is how it all starts, and it's very, like, of the time, like, in the moment kind of building, and rather than trying to be this, like, being like a big prophecy or whatever to kind of like give us like a like this is he knew he would be a big man. Like it was really cool to see that it was just like
Mhm.
him dealing with what it was, and that ends up his Panther tribe ends up being the tribe that like the clan that like leads everyone and builds out like what Wakanda becomes later on. So it was really cool. Um and that, so for a world building aspect, I did not it was fun to see the different Panthers. Again, we're not my favorite characters, but like it's fun to see them in different time periods and the stuff they had to go through.
And there's the different stories that they like, yeah, like the different time periods and just like they're dealing with a different landscape,
And I love that Namor is
like
like
in the
ageless the
world.
whole time. So like you hear like one of them you see him, and then one of
Mhm.
them you just hear about him,
I
and then like
literally.
that, and I'm like these are two different administrations of Panther, and this
And
man
it's
is still
still he's
Mhm.
still
causing
out
a
there.
ruckus. Yeah.
I also like
Yeah.
that. I was thinking about I think it's Aishuri, where you have like her meeting Namor, and I liked in terms of like the world building of that as well. Just there's that one, and then one of the other ones where you hear about places where things that happen kind of in Wakanda, or kind of things that you think of as typically Wakandan and own and belonging to Wakanda as isolationist and insular as it is, like also happen elsewhere, or have like ripple effects. And so Shuri going and finding, and she's not an ancestor, but she's a relative who has grown and like lived in America. Black Panther in one of the stories going to a farm in America because of a Wakandan um, accidentally, or I don't accidentally, a Wakandan being put into slavery, being kidnapped and thrown into slavery, even though like people didn't know that Wakanda existed, or and so they're the only ones, and they uh, I found that to be like very interesting because of there's that thing about like conspiracies, and also just like kind of certain things are like impossible to actually contain, right? And so with the
Mhm.
world building and the backstory of like how Wakanda got vibranium, how the heart-shaped herb comes into being and stuff like that, like the idea that like of course somewhere there's another place where vibranium has developed, or a heart-shaped herb has like or something similar to a heart-shaped herb has developed completely outside of like the control of the Wakandans. And what that means, and the perspective that that gives. And I think it's something that I was thinking about, especially because I recently read Homegoing by Yaigasi, and like one of the things about like that stuck with me about that book as well is just like how closely tied the diaspora is, even through all the diasporic wars and all the ways in which we want to try to like individualize ourselves and or talk about our differences. Like there are far more similarities, there are far more like cultural touch points and things. And so I thought that world building was really like some of my favorite parts that I've read so far, like of just, I don't know, like how these things kind of evolved completely separately but very similarly. So yeah.
Yeah, you saying that reminded me like one thing that was like a um not epiphany, but it was like revealed, um was that like there's a toxicity to, and again, this is how that shows how little I've actually like read Black Panther. Because like you would think the name vibranium, like there has to be a reason why it has a name vibranium, right? And so it was, for me, this is the first time I was actually getting insight into why that was. And so like in Bashinga's story, you learn that like raw vibranium is very toxic, like highly toxic, and like that's partially one of the reasons why Wakandans are very protective of it. Um, because like they figure out a way to cause vibrations, usually like through drumming and music, whatever, to like shape and mold vibranium in a way that it will not have the toxic effects on the people who are handling it. And I'm like, so that for me was like, it was like, oh, like this is like, of course it all makes sense, but like I didn't know I needed an origin story for like why like people are like not able to handle raw vibranium. I didn't even know how the treatment went until I got to that story, and I was like, oh, okay. So like the vibranium is in like the handling and the shaping of it, like the vibrations of it. So that was cool. And then I think we got in a little bit into like the different stories and perspectives, but so far, are there any like favorite characters in or like perspectives that you've seen, like from the different stories that like really stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I have to figure out what the story was. I'm going to go back to the table of contents here.
Mm-hmm.
Is it in Faith or is it And I Shall See the Sunrise? Yeah, in Yami. So I also like didn't know that Queen Ramona is like T'Challa's stepmother, or adopted
Mm-hmm.
mother. So
Yeah,
stepmom.
stepmom.
And so hearing more about Nyami, and then also hearing about her in the story in which she prioritizes her education and like her want to learn and travel, and then how that leads to her exile from her family. And it also gives you a good glimpse into like she's Wakandan, but she's not of like the royalty or hierarchy. So when she meets and falls in love with T'Chaka, like she's seen as an outsider. And so that kind of like elitism that like exists, and how she is just kind of from her background and stuff like been an outsider like her whole life. I found that to be like really interesting, especially because it reminded me a lot of Shuri. And then to think of the fact that like
Mm-hmm.
she is T'Challa's mom. And I see a lot of like, I guess nature versus nurture or whatever, but I see a lot of like Ramona in T'Challa, and then seeing a lot of Shuri in Yame. It was like really, I really enjoyed it, I should say. And then I think she was probably a favorite character, as well as I'm not going to say favorite character, but the way in which Killmonger is like written about, I thought was very compelling.
Yeah.
It
It
was
was
interesting
interesting, yeah.
as opposed to like I like him as a character because but like I found myself like drawn to that in terms of like writing and like so I think those two kind of like really stood out to me. And then I think because I just have little sister vibes and stuff, I just like Shuri in general. And I just love too that she is like a genius and understands like genetics and technology and all of this stuff, but she is also like a little sister. Like she's just like, I'm gonna do it. He'll figure it out later. Like, or like he'll, he's got my back, even though he doesn't know he has my back, or even if he's mad that he has to have my back, he's there. So I think Shuri is a favorite character too, just because of that.
Yeah, I really liked Bast. I mentioned her
yeah,
already.
Bast.
She was like so just like kind of, it's like she's a god, so she's just kind of like playful, but she's also like, look, I got you. Like I literally chose you and your like bloodline, so you're good. Don't worry about these other people.
She's also very
But
cat-like,
also,
like Panther-like. She's just very also very like,
yeah,
is this what we're doing?
yeah. That's what it is. She gives cat. She's very like judgy and like just
Also, like I'm
kind
gonna
of
watch you
fickle,
flail and enjoy
but
it a little bit.
yeah.
Playing
But like
for food.
I'm here. Like I'm help.
Yeah.
Clearly, like the fact that you still have this power is like the I guess proof that you still have my favor, but I like to watch you squirm. Like that's fun for me. So yeah, no, I liked her. I liked what's his name? Ricky Doc from Heart of the Panther.
Brother
He was like
Doctor,
really
Brother Flower.
interesting.
Yeah, Brother
Yeah,
Flowers.
Brother Flowers. Yeah, he was just very like yeah, I just liked him as a character. I thought it was interesting to see him and T'Challa kind of like feel each other out. And also he just people who have affinity for like, and he was giving like Snow White kind of like he's just like, I got all these like creatures and they're like the homies, whatever. Yeah, I'm sure I'm missing someone, but I feel like those two for sure stood out.
Y'all ready? I have a list. I really enjoyed Storm. Aurora Monroe Storm. I think that her characterization was like spot on for like what we know of her. And like she definitely handled the situation like a G. Like she was like, I'm coming in here. Like I am emotionally available, but I'm also like real about the situation, and I'm gonna do what I want to do. But I'm also gonna like fill things out before I do them a little bit.
And it felt like it addressed some of the things that people didn't like about Storm and T'Challa's relationship. And I feel like was like, and I think it was good to get her perspective on that as opposed to like doing that from T'Challa's point of view.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was like it did take like the best elements, I feel like, of like some romance stories where like they have both romantic lead perspectives. So you're kind of like, oh, I was feeling this, and then like, oh, he was feeling that. I could tell, like that kind of like thing. So it was cool.
Yeah.
I liked the Shuri and Shuri, but I like the Shuri and the Bontemps better. Because it was just the way that she was like characterized there. She's a little bit, it seems like she's a little bit older. And she just like is really like she's okay. So I enjoy like the one thing about like monarchy, which I'm like very over. I remember growing up and like enjoying like books that had monarchs. It wasn't like a big deal, but now that I have my problems with the system, I see the issues with it. It just like it's glaring at me, so I can never really like a monarch character like that. But I do enjoy whenever a character who's part of a monarchy is kind of like a party character, like your Prince Harry of the family kind of thing. And so like Party Thor in Marvel's What If animated series, I loved Party Thor. And I feel like this Shuri, the second
Mhm.
story, brings that same kind of like party Shuri kind of energy. She's like, because she was like, I have a lot to bring to the table. And Queen Ramonda's like, so like you mean by a lot you mean Meghan and Harry's and Idris Elba's phone numbers? That's what you mean you bring to the table? Like, what are we doing? And she's like pissed off when she wants to go to Ibiza. And I'm like, yeah, there's something about a party monarch that I'm like, that's hilarious. I love it. Like, and so the actual story, like journey she goes through is just fun. And I enjoyed her and how she reacted in that story. And then in that story, she interacts with Dr. Jericho Drum, who is Brother Voodoo, as well as Monica Rambeau, and I enjoyed both of their characterizations. And like, I like something
Mhm.
like like just like these were white people writing these characters at the time, so their origin stories in the comics are real trash. And like Brother Voodoo in itself is so problematic. But the way that the writer for that short story used it, I felt was so masterful. I really like it left off the page and I enjoyed it a lot. And the way that like it was women loving women, but it was black women and loving women. So like Monica Rambeau shows up in this like special like light um induced dress that uses her powers, and like Shuri and the Dora Milaje she's with, but for like yes girl go off, like it was just like a cute little moment and I loved it. So and Monica was like yes, like it was just I just loved it so much. So there's more stories with Monica Rambeau written that way and y'all know about it, pass it my way because it was a moment and I loved it. And then I also enjoyed the villain from the Legacy story. Like there's a story Legacy called where there's a main character, she's like a teenager named Erica, and she finds out about her family legacy being interconnected with the Dora Milaje, but she finds out in the worst way by like being like on a hit list.
Mhm.
And it is like the villain in that she
Yeah, she was
was
tight.
that was a good villain. I was like, okay, this is fun. And then I also liked Erica and how she reacted. So like those are the main characters that I was like, the way that they're written and even in short story format, like really came out of the page. And I like was like, ah man, like I can't think about this book without thinking about these characters that really pop out as you read them.
Mhm. Yeah, agreed. One of the things I also liked about Legacy is it did give, like, MCU vibes in the sense of, and I think, like, just Marvel in general, but in the sense of, like, shit going down in the most, like, in the worst
Worst
place,
possible
like, she's in
time.
an
Yes.
airport bathroom,
Yeah.
and you're just like, "Now look." Like
And the fact that there was like there
like
were bystanders who were like being nosy, and there was like, oh shoot, it's getting too deep. It's getting
right, and then they're like,
Oop,
"Oop, I gotta
I
go.
gotta go.
I'm out." Like, though, yeah, that one had me, like, kinda laughing at it just in the sense of, like, this is so, like, classic, um, but, like, yeah, I really liked that story as well.
Okay. I wanted to wrap up with if you have any like recommendations you would make based on the stories or the book overall, and or highest
Mm.
and lowest rated stories, like what you recommend or wouldn't. I don't know if you do, because like different stories are for different people, so like something that I might hate might be something else someone else might love. But like maybe like your two highest and your two lowest rated, for an idea of like why they were so different and how you felt about them.
Mm, m'kay. Well, okay, so I guess we mentioned Africa Risen, but I feel like, especially if you like, or if you're into just, like, Afrofuturism and, like, Black speculative fiction, and in more, like, original worlds, obviously, this is, like, it's built off of IP, but I would say that they have kind of similar vibes, and, I really enjoyed a lot of the stories in that, anthology, so definitely would recommend that. Um, I was like, "What have I read?"
I'm trying to think of what I read, but also like movies, TV. Like I'm saying, like X Men '97, that episode,
Yeah,
like with Storm,
yeah.
like pick it up, watch it. Like watch X Men '97, but definitely
Mhm.
watch that first episode with Storm because it's amazing. And then the later Storm episodes are also amazing. Just watch X Men '97. Just watch it.
Just watch X-Men. Yeah,
And the
I need to
storyline is
get to that
really good.
actually.
Like the storyline is really, really good.
I was thinking about the like most random of recommendation things. There's a Spidey and His Amazing Friends episode with T'Challa, and they're at like a museum.
He's a recurring character.
He is a recurring character, but like the one in which they're at like the museum, I believe. They're super excited to like see Prince T'Challa like speak about something, and it's literally for children. It's for like babies, not
It's for the
it's for the
babies.
babies, but it is
Yeah.
a very enjoyable episode, and you kind of get that like I think the episode is like the lesson of the episode is kind of like slowing down and like making a plan and just like not being too impulsive, I guess, with when it comes to, you know, like Peter Parker, like a baby Peter Parker and a baby T'Challa. But like I was just thinking about that in terms of the like and there's also I don't know why my brain keeps going to these, but like Marvel Rising with Shuri, and Shuri comes to like the Marvel Rising team. And I forget who it is, but there's like a little bit of jealousy, a little bit of like what you were talking about, Porshèa, of like the party kind of royal where they're just like kind of everyone loves them, they're good at everything, but they're a little shallow, I guess, maybe. I don't know. But like there is also a Marvel Rising with Shuri that I think that just popped into my head as like something that I would recommend people to check out. I read Black Widow book. I'm trying to remember. It was a novel. It was like a YA novel. It was a while ago. It's been out for a while, and it definitely had that like more like secret agent spy on a mission type of thing. That deals with like family as well. It's weird that I would go to Black Widow, but it was one of those things that like kind of I think about a lot, as it was probably my first Marvel like novel that I've really like read and got into. I think it's called like I'm trying to find the title. Forever Read by Margaret Stoll. I'm just thinking more about like the going on a mission family dynamic type of thing that like I would recommend if you like some of the more like action secret mission stories in this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'd also say, which like probably most of you have seen it at this point, but The Woman King.
Mm.
If you just, you know, that's the Dora Milaje are inspired by
Yeah.
the Dahomey. I guess also
Women of
to some
Wakanda as
extent, like the
well.
Bones of Ruin. Yeah, Women of Wakanda. The Bones of Ruin, that trilogy. I haven't read the third one, like the final book just came out, which I haven't read yet. But I would say, especially in regards to like I'm thinking of that one where they're trying to like stop the Europeans from getting too close to Atlantis. Um the vibes are kind of similar to me in that part. Like it's very different. Like it's this African tightrope walker in London. She has like she can't die. And she gets like roped into this like what's the word? This tournament. It's called like the Tournament of Freaks. And they're like fighting. Meanwhile, the people who are sponsoring them are like preparing for the end of the world or whatever, who's going to be in charge of the end of the world. But it just has some very like, I would say that there's a theme in Tales of Wakanda, especially across like specific stories of like Europeans or white folks not being able to like mind their business and like always having to like go in and, you know, exploit and take power from where, you know, they feel like they deserve it or are entitled to it. And so I feel like that book or that series also goes into that. It's set more, the first book is set in London completely, but then like they travel and stuff in the second book, and like the last half of it is in is in, I want to say like, yeah, like the homie tribe, or a kingdom. So yeah.
If you want to read a book on like if you like the Bass stories and you want to read a book about like a black deity effing with like a descendant or like someone of the diaspora, pick up River Mama. It's based in Toronto, and it is like I believe the main character, her family is West Indian. Um um yeah, and they one day she walks down the street. She's having a bad day, and it gets worse because she somehow ends up like going under a bridge and like falling into the water. Like her phone falls, and then she grab she falls into the water. And then the river mama deity charges her with finding a missing comb. So it's that like Mama Wata like comb story, but set off in like Toronto. So it's kind of like elements of like American Gods, where it's like the gods have like they're everywhere, even wherever their people are, wherever they've like migrated to. But also you're giving a young character who may not have like had full understanding or being fully brought up an understanding of like who this deity is and what she means, and like challenged to do stuff with these side quests the whole time that like really put her in dire situations. And because the deity is is like, oh, it's just like Tuesday, like what's the problem? And it's just a mess the whole way through, and it's a pretty good story, and there may be allusions to a certain rapper in the story as well.
I would also say too, just like the Black Panther comics in general, the Ta-Nehisi Coates run, I think, is beloved pretty universally. I can't tell you where to start. Comics are insane that way, but just like pick up a run and go back through some of those like classic stories.
Yeah, like I did not know. I knew in passing about like Aurora Monroe, like Storm and like T'Challa being married. And I also knew that her like main love interest is Forge, but I didn't know like the real true tea, like their story like behind it, like in depth. And the X-Men 97 episode shows her in relationship with Forge. And so it was funny because where the last episode left off and where Storm is in this book, um she has been betrayed by Forge, and I'm like, ooh, like I actually know what that means. Like I get that reference. So it's there are some tie-ins to things, like even like canonically, like on what's showing up on television. So if it's an easier on ramp into like the stories here, it might be worth like checking those out at the same time. Okay. I don't know if you want to give your highest and lowest rated stories, like one or two of each.
I feel like I can do my highest. So Shadow Dreams, which is like we'll get more in depth on that one, but I really liked that. And really because I mean, I don't want to get too deep in it, so I'll just say I like it because we are going to discuss it. So that one. I also really liked The Underside of Darkness. Because like the historical nature of it, we get a different Black Panther. That's the one where we're kind of trying to like get these like French explorers or whatever out of trying to make sure they don't reach Atlantis, but it's also like an interesting situation of these like two hidden kingdoms trying to maintain secrecy but also peace between the two. So they're like, oh, we can't let this happen. Yeah, it's like we can't let this happen because then they'll blame us and then we'll be at war, but then that will expose both of us and then all these other folks will, you know what I mean? So it was just like I liked the way that it like established that tension and made it really like obvious why what was happening couldn't happen, and then like how they kind of interacted in that. Yeah, I liked that story. I thought it was really interesting, especially on the world building side. So I guess I'll say those are my two. And then I think the first story I had a hard time like planting myself in like the main character's position. Like I didn't fully understand.
Agreed.
Maybe it was just a matter of when I started reading. Okay, cool. Because I was like, it could have
It was
just been
my lowest
me
rated
and like
one.
how I started reading. Because I was like, I'm not really understanding. Like I'm understanding what's happening, but I'm not really understanding her purpose for being there. And so it was kind of hard to like follow the story, not really getting why we were getting that particular perspective. Yeah, so that I would say that one, but then the next one I really liked. So it was kind of just like, not really sure how I feel about it. And then as I kept going, being like, okay, yeah, that was just that particular story that I didn't really connect to.
Yeah, I was gonna say like lowest would be Kindred Spirits, which is like the first one. And then not sure yet. But I did really like the Heart of a Panther. No, that's not right. The second one, Heart of the Panther. Yeah. So
Yeah.
and again, it goes back to that kind of having something that is quintessentially that you think of as quintessentially Wakandan, growing and having another completely separate, being completely distant from it, and like how that evolved. Also like large catfish and you know, animal friends are always fun for me. So I think like those, I know it's like the first two, but I think that like, especially in like starting to read it, it was kind of interesting how I was like, ooh, and then immediately the second one, I was like, oh, so kind of really summarized my feeling about reading in anthologies in general too. So
Yeah, so the first one sounds like it's unanimous. I mean, you don't have to skip it, like, it's whatever, but, like, I did rate it the lowest.
Because I think also like I couldn't tell too if I was missing it because I'm not as like
yeah,
steeped in the lore, you know what I mean? So I'm also like not like, so leaving space for that, it could be that you read it and you immediately get it. And but it just felt like I was missing some
To
context.
me, it felt too exposition heavy. It felt like it was trying to help someone who wasn't rooted in lore too much. Like it was trying to spoon feed too much. So I actually didn't like that part of it. So I don't know. I guess it depends on how you're reading it. That's how I felt about that one. And
Yeah.
then I also like that was the lowest rated, but there was one that I rated nearly as low, which was the What's That in the Dark one. And I'm like, now that you're saying that it's canon, I'm like, I just don't like that canon apparently. Like I don't care about the tiger guy. Like it just it did not.
Well, I had to look it up because I was like, but the other thing is there's multiple white tigers, and I think they have different backstories. Because when I Googled it initially, it was like two other people came up, and then I had to like Google it with his name, and I was like, oh, okay. So I think it's just like he's not the most popular one.
And I can see why. Like
I was also like, why did you give a cop the heart?
It was
Yeah.
that I was completely turned off I was like, I cannot.
But that's like not the author's fault.
I
That's
can't.
just like
It's
this
this.
character
I
that was
can't get with
created.
any of this. This is not my. I don't. It's not it. I'm not. I keep having no's.
But I
keep
will
having
say
just to
with
say
that
no.
story, I did. Yeah, I will say with that story though, I did appreciate the like more of the insight into how far-reaching Wakanda's like war dogs are.
Yeah.
And like where they get placed and how like that part of it, I liked that bit of world building. And then of course then we're dealing with like white supremacists, which I don't necessarily like, but I appreciated like the setup of the plot, if not as much of like the perspective that we were approaching it from, I guess.
Yeah. I don't even that part. There's a lot of no's for me with that story. So I gave like 1, 2, 3 stories the same rating, and it was the highest rating I gave for any story. And those were Return of the Queen, Legacy, and Bon Temps, because I just really enjoyed them a lot. I talked about Legacy and Return of the Queen a good bit because of Storm and the characters that I liked from Legacy. And then we will get into Bon Temps. This is when I mentioned Monica Rambeau and Brother Voodoo. So, and Shuri, the second Shuri. So
when I read that one, I was like, I'm liking this, but I'm not gonna choose it because I already, I was like, this one's Porshèa's.
It's Porshèa
Before I got there, I was
like,
waiting on 2 other stories. I was like, oh, these might be it. And then I was like, nah.
Well, so I thought it was gonna be Storm. I was like, I feel like one of us is gonna choose the Storm one for sure.
Yeah.
So I thought it might be that one, but then when I got to Bon Temps, I was like, oh yeah, this is.
I had to put it in. So yeah,
this is
that's a good one. And we'll be talking more about our top picks in more depth for the series.
Yeah. And there's and I'm sure, for those of you who have read or are reading, I'm sure you will like other stories for different reasons and stuff. We're gonna get into why we liked or why we were drawn to certain ones the most. But also we do want to know your thoughts or what were your favorite stories and
yeah,
and why and that kind of thing.
We just always want to hear from you guys in general.
I want to know.
Thank you for listening. For the next few weeks, we'll each be choosing a favorite story, like we said, to discuss and fight about. After we discuss each story, we'll ask you which of the chosen 3 is your favorite and reveal the winner in our final episode of this Black Panther miniseries. Next week, we'll be discussing Bayana's pick, Shadow Dreams. So join us for our live recordings on Sundays at 1 p.m. These are going to be open to, I think you still need to sign up to be a BNC baddie, but it's you don't have to pay any money. No? They're just open?
No, you don't have to sign up. Nope. So we post the link in Instagram stories, and it'll also be if you go on Instagram, we have our link tree or whatever. That's not what it's called, but that if you click it, the link will be on there too on that page. If you're in our Discord or the BNC Discord, the link is shared there. So it's just shared on YouTube, and then you can find it. You could probably also go to our YouTube page and see it there.
Yeah, it'll show up in YouTube page. in live in the live tab of our YouTube page. So join us for live recordings on Sundays at 1 p.m. Pacific time, or you can wait until the episodes drop on Wednesday.
Wizard Team is part of the Black Nerds Create Collective. If you want to keep up with our content, you can check out our website at blacknerdscreate.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Tumblr at Wizard Team Pod and at Black Nerds Create.
Bye.
Bye. See you next week.
Bye, y'all.